Joining me now to discuss all of this, Eugene Scott, senior politics reporter at Axios. Symone Sanders-Townsend, former senior advisor to Vice President Harris. She's also, of course, the host of Symone on MSNBC. And Stephen Hayes, editor and CEO of The Dispatch and an NBC News contributor. Thanks to all of you for being here on a busy Monday. Eugene, I want to start with you and this lack of enthusiasm for both of the potential candidates in the general election. How do these potential campaigns counter that? How, and does turnout become, I mean, we always talk about turnout, but sure, is that now really the focus?
Absolutely. And we have to remember in 2020, there was some early lack of enthusiasm for these candidates. And I think what we've seen both of the candidates do then was make their voters turn out. They've put forward ideas and convictions and policies and promises that made people who initially said, you know what, I'm not crazy about this, ultimately do what they needed to do when Election Day came around.
Stephen, what's your take on this? I mean, only 5% want to see President Biden and former President Trump run again. That's staggeringly low. I mean, what are the implications of that?
In my view, that suggests the American people have a tremendous amount of common sense. I mean, they weren't enthusiastic about these choices in 2020. Even as Eugene says, they eventually rallied to the side. But that, I think, is an effect of negative partisanship, not of enthusiasm for the candidates. You know, in your discussion with Monica and Steve, you called it stunning. I think it is absolutely stunning when you look at these numbers. When you look at the Joe Biden numbers in particular, we all know that there's a strong group of Republicans, independents, and Democrats who are opposed to Donald Trump. But the Joe Biden numbers in particular are stunning because he's the sitting president. He's the incumbent. He has this huge advantage built in. And Monica told you that she thinks the White House strategy is going to be to say, well, watch him. I would just say we'd like to watch him. We actually don't see that much of him. He's not doing press conferences. He's not giving a lot of interviews. He's not out there. And if he runs, he's going to have to be on the campaign trail. I would suggest to you that the White House might not be as confident in private when they tell us to watch him as they are in public when they give comments like that.
Symone, what about that? And does the president, the administration, his campaign need to make him more available on the campaign trail?
Look, I think that it is retail politics that wins campaigns, and retail politics is being out there with the people. That's where we hit a lot of diners, the coffee shops, you know, what we were all used to prior to, you know, COVID-19 and the pandemic hitting us. And frankly, retail politics is where Joe Biden shines. And so I do think that the president himself is going to want more face time with people, with individuals. But this is going to be very different than 2020, right? This is, first of all, he is the sitting president of the United States of America, which means, yes, he wants to go out there and campaign, but he's got a trip to Ireland coming up. He will be making more international trips. And increasingly, it is hard to make the case domestically while you are out about in the world doing the business of the presidency. So I think there'll be a balance and a rope that they have to walk, but it is going to be absolutely critical that the president is out there with the people, speaking with folks, not behind a podium on prompter.
And I think we have a word cloud of voters' concerns about President Biden running again, and it really kind of underscores some of the points that you're making here, Symone, that voters are concerned about the issue of age at 80 years old. Eugene, he obviously is the oldest president here. Age, too old, younger. The White House, the president's emerging campaign knows that they have to address this. But you heard Monica talk a little bit about strategy, but how do they do this in an effective way? Because to some extent, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And I think to a lesser degree, some of these issues were concerns in 2020. And what the White House did at the time when he was a candidate was convince voters that he had the most experience. And this was going to show up as wisdom, and especially compared to, you know, opponent who did not have this type of, like, institutional wisdom and experience and discipline. And so I think they're going to lean in on that. They're also likely going to get younger surrogates. We saw the Instagram influencers come on board. I was talking to some people with Maxwell Frost's team. There really is going to be an effort, I believe, to try to get some surrogates who can convince people that he has what's best.
It's interesting because Biden is just a little bit more liked by voters, Stephen, than former President Trump. Is that significant given how far out we are from 2024?
I mean, it matters. Likability matters in a general election. That's no secret. But if you look at the splits among Republican enthusiasm for Trump and Democratic enthusiasm for Biden, Republicans are more enthusiastic about Donald Trump at this point. Now, that befuddles me, but there are a lot of Republicans who do like Donald Trump. And as Steve pointed out, he goes through these legal battles and these legal moments, and there seems to be this rallying around around Trump effect. I will say, what we saw in the Manhattan DA may well be very different from his role in the insurrection, his role in trying to steal an election, where I think voters, Republican voters in particular, will be reminded of some of the things that have given them the most pause about Donald Trump, rather than this sort of triple bank shot case that we're seeing out of New York.
Yeah, and as Steve said, the big X factor here are the legal issues swirling around the former president. Will there be more indictments?
More indictments, and will those indictments push voters, not the Republican Party apparatus at whole, but will it push the voters to say, maybe Donald Trump has too much baggage for us. Maybe I want to go with another candidate. We don't know. Again, end of August is the first debate on the Republican primary side, so we have to wait and see. I will say this about the enthusiasm or the lack thereof for either of the candidates. I think what matters, the follow-up here, I think is very important. If candidate X or candidate A, if Joe Biden or Trump are on the ballot, will you vote for them? And I think that Democrats increasingly say, we think Joe Biden is too old, but oh yeah, if it's him or Donald Trump, I'm voting for Joe Biden. So I don't know.
By that argument?
I mean, yeah, I can see that. I think Republicans are nervous about going head-to-head with Donald Trump against Joe Biden. Clearly, even with the country expressing what we've seen in this poll, I think Republicans are nervous.
Let's talk about Republicans writ large in the emerging field. And Trump is leading DeSantis by double digits. Again, it's still so incredibly early, but Eugene, what do you make of this? And Simone's talking about the first debate. I mean, do the knives need to come out at that debate so that a Ron DeSantis, a Mike Pence, who is not yet officially announced, can actually start carving out their own lane?
It's going to have to be. I mean, this has been Trump's party for a while, and the people who've entered into the race right now have not been very critical of the president. They're trying to figure out a way to run alongside him without, like, attacking him so they don't alienate voters, but show that they're somehow different from him, but have the same worldview as him. It's really confusing, and people know Trump in the GOP, and they said, that's what I like. I don't know what you're doing, and that's why they're backing him. It'll be interesting to see what Chris Christie does, who is trying to carve a lane at someone who will run while criticizing Trump.
Yeah, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, is there room for other people that we're not polling, other people that we're not spending a lot of time talking about getting? Glenn Youngkin just got a major contribution from a donor who had given to Ron DeSantis and had previously been a Donald Trump supporter. You hear talk about Brian Kemp, who seems, at least among Republican primary voters I talked to have handled the Trump situation pretty well, come out ahead. And I think as Ron DeSantis looks weaker than people would have expected him, he's not the only Trump alternative. Do you start to see other people who have thought maybe they wouldn't run say, I might take my shot?
Symone, is this a moment where we see abortion becoming, for as large of an issue as it is, does it become the central theme for the president? And does he... what he did in 2022 effective? Does he need to build on that?
I think absolutely. Abortion is, in fact, a 2024 issue for Democrats and Republicans, because when rights are rolled back, when the bans come in place across the country, it's not just bans for women who voted for Joe Biden. It is the ban, period, blanket ban, and it affects Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And I do think that while Republicans have to get their good answer on, every candidate has to figure out where they stand and just lean into wherever that is, just pick a place and plant your feet. I think Democrats concurrently, when and if he announces his re-election campaign, he will also have to come out strong on it. I think his administration has a record, but I do think that there are folks among the base that want to hear more from the president, and I think that he is poised and ready to give them what they're looking for.
Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, Republicans, it's been interesting to watch Republicans struggle with this issue, because for 50 years they've been arguing that it should be returned to politics and that it should go to the state level. You would think that pro-life elected Republicans would have had a better answer when that's in fact what happened. But as Symone says, they're trying to figure out where they land on this. They're worried about primary fights from the right, and they're worried about a general election challenge in the main.
And notably, actually, former Vice President Pence took a swipe at his former boss for saying this is a state's issue and not being firmer on that point. Thank you so much for a great conversation, Eugene, Symone, and Stephen.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.